Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and yes, today is the last part of the fish room tour. It is part 6 for 2022. If you haven't seen the other parts, I will put those in the description below. But today we're going to be looking at the 33 longs and the 40 breeders behind me, as well as a couple of 125-gallon tanks. A lot of cool fish. Appreciate you being here. Hope you enjoy the video. So this is the last part of the fish room tour. It is part 6. We're starting out looking at the 125 Lake Tanganyika tank. There are lots of different fish in here, from the calvus to the cyprichromis. The bifurnatus are the ones that are striped. The calvus look kind of predatory. Cagawensis. There's also tiger pictilis in here. Those are the more elongated fish. And there are just so many cool fish to see here. I originally put this tank together because I just wanted a nice mix of Lake Tanganyika fish. No, it's not a biotope or a biotype, and that's just fine with us. I like to have the plants. I like the jungle val and the crypts and the anubias that are in here. This tank has always got a lot of action going on. We used to have some shell dwellers in here that those numbers have diminished a little bit. We have some gold ocellatus in here that are not visible, but I like the mix of this fish. I think the fish that probably stands out the most are the inkfin calvus, just because of their body shape and their color, and they take a really long time to grow. One of the jokes when you're keeping calvus or a very similar fish called compressiceps is they will take years and years to get to full size. So when you see them full size, it's actually quite an accomplishment. It's also the reason why some of these fish can be rather expensive, especially the calvus, because if you see them at a sellable size, it's probably taken a while for them to grow to that size. This tank is run by 2 sponge filters, and there is also an AquaClear 110 hang-on back filter on the left-hand side. There are 2 Fluval 3.0s that are providing the light for this tank. The sand, I believe that is a sand that was purchased from one of the big box stores, and it's done just fine. We don't really add anything for the plants. There's no root tabs in here since we set it up. We don't add any liquid fertilizers. The fish and the ecosystem pretty much do the job. You'll also see swing around in here some older feather fins. We had some Furcifer rosebas. Those are just females, so they're more a silvery color. If there were males, there would be a lot more color with those particular fish. This is the 125 right below. It does need some work, but it also houses one of my favorite fish, and that is the Vieja Argentea. That is the silver fish. There are actually 2 of them in this tank. One of them likes to hide under the rocks. This one likes to swim around a little bit more. In addition to the Vieja, we've got some silver dollars. We have 1 filamentosus barb. You see the tiger botea back there. And I believe there might be a couple of old white skirt tetras. There are also about 3 or 4 bristlenose plecos in this tank. This is also a tank that gets a decent amount of blackbeard algae, but I've mentioned this numerous times. It is pretty much under control. We've never done anything specifically to remove it. We control our lights, we control the amount of nitrates in the tank, and that controls the amount of blackbeard algae growth. So while it's coating the surfaces of the wood and rocks and even the back of the tank a little bit, it really doesn't grow any more than that. Now this tank does need some updates. We are going to have to, there's scratches in the glass. We're probably going to have to flip the tank around, scrape off the paint the side that is currently facing the front, and Joanna's probably going to want to rescape this tank as well. The other thing is these silver dollars have turned out to be a little bit harder on one another than I anticipated. You'll see some fins kind of torn up there, and they've been a little bit more rambunctious with one another. They haven't done any damage to each other recently, but when they were younger and they were figuring things out, it was a little bit rougher, but they've since settled down. This is a 40-gallon breeder. I love this tank. This is Hemichromis exual. It is the same genus as your typical jewel cichlid. Obviously, the coloration is different than your typical jewel. The females are those smaller orange colored fish. The males are a little bit larger. They're a little bit darker. And we do have a couple pairs in this tank. I would love for them to breed. They haven't done so just yet, but we'll see. There's plenty of rock work in there, plenty of space. They've been very tolerant of one another up to this point. However, if and when they do start to breed, I expect the aggression levels to go up a little bit, and we may have to move some fish around. You can see here the male is just kind of showing off. They've got a lot of interesting color. I don't know if I like them as much as my original jewel cichlid strain that I had. If you go back and look at my species profile, it was an amazing fish. They had such a deep, dark red and purple. Obviously, this is a different species, so the coloration is going to be different. And I do like them. I just don't know if I like them as much as the ones I had before. That being said, looking forward to trying to get these guys to breed because they're not quite as common as the standard jewels. This 40 breeder has just got one sponge filter, an old 3-foot Phoenix Stingray Light. We have some Carib Sea gravel in here along with a lot of flagstone and just some standard river rock, and that's been pretty good. We've also got some bristlenose plecos in here to help control the algae. So this is the 40 breeder right above. You can see the red tail botia right there towards the right next to the plants and rocks. There are actually 6 of them in this tank, but they hide a lot in this particular setup. They're great looking fish when they're out. This is the star of the show. This is our red spot severum. We had a female in here too. We had a pair. They had given us some fry. The female, we lost her about 2 months ago, and we're left with this male. I don't know what I'm going to do with him. I really like the fact that he is almost flawless. He's got a little nick in the fin there that just happened a couple weeks ago. But there's something to be said for keeping a fish by itself in a tank where it can really grow to its full potential and look amazing. And so the worry I have is if I put it in another tank, it might start sparring with any other cichlid in that tank. So the 150 with the Geophagus altifrons is probably the most likely place for it to go, but I am concerned that we might have some issues later on. So for right now, it's going to stay here until I come up with a better solution. Now this is a 33 long. This tank is going to have to be redone. I'm not liking the interactions between these two fish, as you can clearly see. I moved the Cryptoheris nanaluteus, which are the yellow fish on the left-hand side, in here with these Guaianacara sturgiosi. That's these fish here. I was hoping in a 4-foot tank, and with all this structure, they would each find their area in the side, each side of the tank, and they sort of did that, but there's still a little bit too much sparring in here. It stresses me out a little bit too much, and I don't like the interactions that are going on. So sometimes you try things, you leave it for a little while, and you assess, and we're going to have to probably move out the Cryptoheros because this was the Guaianacara tank. It's still their tank. We'll move the other fish out. This is one of my favorite Lake Tanganyika fish. This is the species 44. The male in the center there is amazing. The colors are outstanding. Most of the rest of the fish here are going to be female. You can see actually one of them is holding. This is a great fish. Lake Victorian fish are very similar to Mbuna in terms of their aggression levels. I often keep them together, but he is loving life in here with all of these other fish. They basically look like somebody threw Skittles all over them and they just kind of melted. This is the last tank that we're going to be looking at today. This is the 33 long that also is going to need an update. The only fish that are in here at this point are the Juliochromis transcriptus. That's the fish up there that you're looking at now. And then there are some Neolamprologus signatus. Cygnus. I don't really like those other fish. I put them in here. When they're young, they look really nice. When they get older, they just turn like a pale gray, and they're relatively mean. You can see one kind of poking up here. Kind of looks like a Burchardi, only not nearly as pretty. This is a tank where I'm dreading it because I'm going to have to pull out all this rock work to get those fish out. And basically, I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I'm going to probably keep the transcriptus. I'd like to add some other rock-dwelling cichlids to this. But yeah, these fish here are definitely, we're going to have to redo this tank. So that was the last part of the fish room tour. Curious which part was your favorite. If you haven't seen the other ones, check out the description below. We'll also have lots of species profiles in here for some of the fish that you've seen. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.